Before we get into tonight's story, I want to take a moment to thank every single one of you who keeps this channel alive. Eclipse Horror Stories isn't just a place for scary tales. It's a community where we face the dark together. If you enjoy true horror, chilling mysteries, and stories that keep you up at night, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. Your support helps us bring more terrifying stories to life, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. If you're hearing this, it means the radios are still working and someone out there is alive. My name is Daniel. I was a park warden before everything turned. I know how this sounds, like another late-night campfire story, but I need you to listen. What's happening isn't a legend, and it isn't a dream. It's real, and it's spreading faster than anyone can track. I don't know how much longer I can keep transmitting, but if my voice reaches you, maybe you'll stand a chance. It started with a call about a missing hiker. Nothing unusual for this area. A man named Howard had gone out for a short walk near the lake and never came back. Search and rescue found him before dark, slumped against a tree, clothes torn, face pale. They thought it was a bear attack, but the wounds were strange. Clean slices, too neat for claws. And his eyes, God, I'll never forget his eyes. They were wide open, milky, as if he was seeing something the rest of us couldn't. They rushed him to the small hospital in town, and I went along to give my report. He was half conscious when they wheeled him in, whispering over and over, like a broken record. The lights, don't follow the lights. I didn't understand then what he meant. Nobody did. An hour later, the whole building shook. I thought it was an earthquake at first, but then came the screams. Nurses ran down the hallway, one of them clutching her face, blood dripping between her fingers. I pushed into Howard's room, and I swear he wasn't the same man anymore. His body arched unnaturally, eyes glowing faint yellow like lantern glass. His mouth opening far too wide as if his jaw was coming unhinged. The lights above flickered and then burst all at once, showering sparks. When the darkness fell, he moved, faster than any human I've ever seen. He tore through the restraints like they were paper. The doctor didn't even have time to scream before Howard's hands. No, not hands anymore. They were too long, too sharp, closed around his throat. I ran. That's all I could do. The hallway was chaos. People pushing, stumbling, the sound of glass shattering behind me. Some tried to fight back, but how do you fight something that doesn't bleed? I barely made it outside. When I looked back through the windows, the hospital lights flared bright again, too bright like flood lamps, and in that glow, more shapes were moving with him. Shadows peeling away from the corners, slipping into human bodies like coats being pulled on. By the time help arrived, it was too late. The building was silent, the parking lot empty. Everyone inside had vanished. No bodies, no blood trails, just silence. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, the stories have spread. Families disappearing from their homes overnight, roads blocked by abandoned cars with headlights still burning. Whole neighborhoods going dark. People say the things come with the light, that when the lamps flare too bright or when the sky glows in ways it shouldn't, that's when they move. I keep telling myself I'm not crazy, but when I close my eyes, I still hear Howard's whisper, "Don't follow the lights." And tonight, for the first time, the woods outside my cabin are glowing. The glow outside my cabin wasn't normal moonlight. It pulsed, faint at first, then brighter, as if the forest itself was breathing. I killed the lantern, pressed my back against the wall, and listened. The night should have been full of crickets and owls, but it was silent, completely silent, the kind of silence that feels like a warning. Through the window I saw them, not clearly, not at first, just shapes weaving between the trees, moving too smoothly, too quick. Every few seconds the light pulsed again, and when it did, their forms sharpened for a breath. Human-like, but stretched, faces too long, limbs bent wrong, and those eyes, yellow, glowing faintly, like they were lit from within. I thought of Howard again, and the way his voice cracked as he begged us not to follow the lights. It made sense now. The glow wasn't just light. It was bait. The radio on my desk crackled then, making me jump. A voice came through, jagged with static. Anyone? Safe zone at the school gymnasium. Repeat, survivors at the school gym. Then silence again. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was dread. If I'd learned anything in the last 2 weeks, it was that safe places didn't stay safe for long. The hospital, the farms, even the church downtown, they'd all fallen. People gathered, barricaded, prayed. And then the lights came, and nothing could hold them back. Still, I couldn't ignore the chance. If there were others alive, I had to reach them. I packed quick, flashlight, knife, the little food I had left. But I didn't dare use the flashlight outside. Not when I knew light itself could betray me. The road to town was littered with reminders of how fast everything had collapsed. A school bus sat crooked in the ditch, its doors open, backpacks scattered across the ground. A sedan was stopped in the middle of the lane, engine running, headlights still shining into the trees. The driver's seat was empty. I walked fast, keeping low, every shadow looking like it might move. Twice I thought I saw figures ahead, but when I blinked, they were gone. The glow pulsed again from deep in the woods, and I heard a sound I can't forget. A voice calling my name. Daniel! I froze. It was my brother's voice. He'd been gone for years, long before this nightmare began. Daniel? It called again, soft, pleading, coming from the glowing trees. I forced myself to keep walking. I'd heard the stories from others. How the things used voices to draw people in, how they mimicked loved ones, even the cries of children. If you followed, you didn't come back. By the time I reached the town's edge, smoke was rising from the rooftops. The school gym was easy to spot. Its big floodlights burned across the parking lot, far too bright, casting long white beams into the night sky. My stomach twisted. They thought the lights were protecting them. I stayed hidden in the alley across the street, watching. For a moment, it seemed almost normal. Families were inside, voices echoing as they tried to create order. A few guards stood by the doors with rifles, their eyes scanning the dark. Then the floodlights flared, too bright, brighter than any bulb should go. I saw the figures moving instantly, peeling out of the glow, pouring across the asphalt like shadows given shape. The guards raised their rifles, but the first fell before he even fired, dragged screaming into the light. The gym doors slammed shut. Screams erupted inside. I wanted to run in to help, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, watching the lights pulse again and again, each burst followed by another scream. When silence finally fell, the floodlights were still burning, but the people inside were gone. I stayed crouched in that alley for what felt like an hour, though it could have been minutes. The lights kept burning, humming loud in the empty lot, the beams stabbing into the sky like a signal. Every time I thought I saw movement inside, I told myself it was my imagination. Deep down, I knew the truth. The gym wasn't a refuge anymore. It was a trap. I turned to leave, but a hand clamped down on my shoulder. I nearly swung my knife before I realized it was human. A young man, maybe 19, dirty hoodie, wide terrified eyes. Behind him, 2 others crept out from the shadows. A woman in her 40s clutching a baseball bat, and a girl barely older than the boy, holding a backpack so tight her knuckles were white. "We saw you," the boy whispered, glancing nervously toward the gym. "You didn't go in either." The older woman's voice was rough. "You're smart. Most people They see the lights, they think safety. But you stayed back. I nodded, still catching my breath. I've seen what happens. The girl stepped forward, her voice trembling. My brother was in there. Her eyes flicked toward the glowing windows, and for a second, I thought she was going to run across the lot. The woman caught her arm, holding her back. Don't, she said sharply. You know what you'll find. We moved quickly after that, sticking to back streets, away from anything lit too brightly. The boy, his name was Matt, explained how they'd survived. They'd been holed up in his uncle's basement when the first attack hit their block. They'd watched through a tiny window as neighbors disappeared into beams of light that seemed to come out of nowhere. It's like they crawl out of the glow, he said. Like the shadows peel away, and then they're just there. The woman, Sandra, had a different story. Her husband had been a deputy, one of the men who tried to fight back with rifles when this first began. She said he emptied a whole magazine into one of the things and it didn't even slow down. But when it stumbled through the headlights of a truck, she swore the bullets seemed to tear it apart. Not the monster itself, but the light around it like breaking glass. That's when I realized, she said quietly, the light isn't just a lure, it's a shield too. It makes them strong. We stopped in the ruins of a diner on the edge of town. The windows were shattered, the booths overturned, but it was dark enough to feel safe for the moment. I shared what I'd seen with Howard in the hospital, the way he changed, the way the lights exploded when he lost control. Sandra listened carefully, her jaw tight, while Matt paced nervously. So they use the light to get close, to take people, I said. But it also hides them, makes them stronger. And without it? Sandra asked. I shook my head. I don't know. I haven't seen one in complete dark. That was when the girl spoke again, barely a whisper. I have. We all turned. She swallowed hard, clutching the backpack tighter. My brother. When they dragged him, he screamed until the lights faded. And when it went dark, I could see it. The thing holding him. It looked weaker, like the skin was coming off. But then the glow came back and it healed. The diner fell silent. Sandra finally said what we were all thinking. So they're not unstoppable. They need it. The light. Outside, the sky pulsed faintly, like a distant storm. Matt peeked through the window, his voice shaking. Then why do I hear them? Calling my name? Matt's whisper seemed to echo in the wrecked diner. The others went still, their eyes darting to the dark corners of the room as if the voices might crawl out of the shadows at any second. Outside, the faint pulsing glow flickered again, a heartbeat of pale light threading through the trees. Sandra gripped the bat tighter. We can't stay here. If they're calling you, they know we're here. They already know we're here, I said quietly. Running without a plan just makes us easier to pick off. The girl, her name was Ellie, I'd learned, hugged the backpack closer. If dark weakens them, she said softly, then we should test it, somewhere safe, just for a minute. Matt spun on her. Safe? There's no safe. But Sandra nodded slowly. She's right. We keep hiding, we die hiding. If darkness hurts them, maybe we can use it. The glow outside surged suddenly, flooding the store with blinding yellow-white light. I heard the boards on the windows crack. Sandra gritted her teeth. They're coming in. And then, from the far corner of the store, Ellie whispered something I almost didn't hear. They don't just use the light. We all turned to her. She was trembling, her hand pressed to her backpack. Her voice shook. They carry it. Inside them. The boards exploded inward, and the store filled with screams. The boards shattered like matchsticks, light tearing through the cracks as if it had weight. Sandra swung her bat, knocking tools and glass across the floor, while Matt screamed for us to get back. I yanked Ellie behind a toppled shelf, shielding her as the glow bled into every corner. Shapes moved inside it, half-formed, jerking, flickering between human and something else. Their eyes locked on us, glowing so bright it hurt to look. One of them hissed, a sound like steam escaping from a pipe. Matt raised a hammer, desperate, ready to throw himself at it. But Ellie's voice cut through the chaos. "Stop!" she shouted. "You'll make it stronger." The creature lunged, but then something unexpected happened. Ellie ripped open her backpack and pulled out a jar. An old mason jar, cloudy glass, sealed tight with a metal lid. Inside, faint light pulsed like a trapped firefly. The creature froze. The glow inside the jar flickered in sync with the light spilling through the windows. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw hesitation in those inhuman eyes. Sandra dragged Matt back, her chest heaving. "What the hell is that?" Ellie clutched the jar to her chest, her voice shaking. "My brother, when they took him, part of it didn't leave. He pushed this into my hands before the light swallowed him. He said, 'Keep it dark, keep it safe.'" The creatures hissed louder, retreating slightly, as if the jar's glow burned them even through the glass. "It's a piece of them," I realized aloud. "You're carrying one of their cores." Ellie nodded, tears streaking her face. I think if we break it open, it'll call the others. But if we keep it shut, it weakens them. They can't stand being near it." Sandra's jaw tightened. "So we've been running blind while you had a weapon this whole time?" "It's not a weapon," Ellie cried. "It's him. My brother. What's left of him." The creatures screeched then, as if the words themselves angered them. One slammed against the shelf, knocking it sideways. The jar's light pulsed faster, rattling in Ellie's grip. Matt grabbed a crowbar. "Then let's use it. Open the damn thing and blow them apart." "No!" Ellie screamed, clutching it tighter. "If it breaks, I don't know what happens." "He told me never to open it." The glow surged again, the creatures pressing harder against the broken boards. One slipped halfway inside, its body jerking as if fighting invisible chains. We didn't have time to argue. I pulled Ellie toward the back exit. "If it weakens them, then we use it to get out now." Sandra covered us with her bat, Matt swinging wildly as we barreled through the storeroom. The jar pulsed in Ellie's arms, the light inside matching the rhythm of her panicked heartbeat. The alley outside was empty, the glow concentrated at the front of the building. We ran, fast, the jar flickering with every step. Behind us, the creatures screamed, but they didn't follow. Not while Ellie carried that thing. We collapsed against a rusted dumpster 3 blocks away, gasping for breath. The town was quieter here, the sky dark except for the faint shimmer on the horizon. Sandra wiped blood from her cheek. "If that jar really weakens them, then it's the only chance we've got. We can't just keep running. We need to end this." Matt's eyes blazed. "Then we break it open. Whatever's in there, use it against them." Ellie shook her head furiously, tears spilling. "You don't understand. If I open it, I lose him. He'll be gone forever." I looked between them, the jar glowing faint in Ellie's hands, Matt's fists clenched, Sandra staring at me for a decision. And for the first time, I realized the truth. The light wasn't just their weapon. It was their life, which meant we held the only way to kill them. We didn't talk much as we walked. The jar sat in Ellie's lap like a sleeping animal, its faint light pulsing against her fingers. Every so often she would press her thumb to the glass, as if feeling for a heartbeat. I kept thinking about the way her face had gone blank when she said her brother pushed the jar into her hand. That look of someone who'd already lost something and was holding the last piece of it. We found a place to make a stand. The old power plant on the hill, a hulking rusted shell that used to hum with electricity. It was a good spot because it had no windows, thick concrete walls, and a metal gate we could close. If the jar drove them away, we could pull the creatures into a place that would let us control the light. If breaking it called them, then at least we'd be ready to hit them with everything we had. We barricaded the main floor as best we could, stacking pallets and old equipment up against the doors. Matt found a length of chain and looped it around a metal post to make a sling. Sandra and I emptied a toolbox until there was a pile of wrenches and rusted nails. We weren't many, and none of our weapons were more than tools. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like we had a plan. Ellie sat on a crate in the center of the room, the jar on her knees. She looked small and brave all at once. She'd stopped crying. Maybe she'd run out, or maybe she'd made her peace. I didn't know. I only knew it was her choice. No one could force her to do what she couldn't live with after. "Once we open it," Matt said, his voice rough, "we don't run. We hit them. Hard. We aim for the light. Smash anything glowing." Ellie lifted her head. Her voice was steady. "If I open it, I'm not asking for a fight. I'm asking to end him right. I can't promise I'll be okay, but I promise I'll try." Sandra went to her and put both hands on Ellie's shoulders. "We're with you every step," she said. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. It was the kind of moment that felt too big for a broken town and a few scared people. It was raw, a decision pushed to the edge of what a human could do. We moved into position. Matt took the entrance. Sandra held the bat by the stairwell. I took the lights, old heavy halogen lamps that still worked, cords coiled tight. We wired them through the breaker box to the main floor. The plan was ugly and simple. Use the jar to draw the creatures in, then drown the room in controlled dark and hit them at the places where the light pooled. Ellie opened the jar with trembling hands. There was a sound like a small glass bell, then a breath of warm light. For a second, nothing happened. Then the whole plant seemed to exhale. Outside, somewhere in the dark, a chorus answered, voices I couldn't place, both human and not. The light in the jar flared brighter, and the walls around us shivered with the echo. I flipped the switch on the lamps. The room exploded into white. The jar's glow harmonized with the artificial light, and for a heartbeat the world was too bright to see. Then we heard them. A low groan that built into a cacophony as shapes tore into the yard and streamed toward the open doors. They moved like smoke filling a room, slipping through every crack. The first rushed the pallet wall and it splintered under their weight. We hit them. Matt swung the chain, his face a scream of grief and fury. Sandra drove the bat into a shoulder that felt wrong. I stabbed at an arm that tasted like nothing, only the sound of tearing. They reeled and reformed, but something had changed. As melee soaked the concrete, the light in the jar dimmed, then pulsed like a dying lantern. Ellie wept, her fingers white against the glass, and then she did the thing none of us had the courage for. She slammed the jar into the floor. The glass cracked in a spiderweb and light spilled like liquid, a thin, bright thread seeping into the concrete. For one awful instant, the room filled with a sound like all the corners of the world being opened. They howled. Not a sound from any man or beast I knew. An empty, keening noise that hit to the bone. The creatures convulsed in the light's path, then folded inward like paper left in the rain. Their forms slumped and stilled, and where they fell the glow sank into the floor with them, leaving behind only ragged shapes unmoving. The jar shattered into dust under Ellie's hands. She collapsed, and I caught her before she hit the ground. Everything after that was half-remembered. We dragged bodies into heaps and piled cinder blocks on the doors until we couldn't see the yard. We tore wiring out of the lamps and let the dark come back in. When silence settled at last, it felt fragile and a little foreign, like a room you're not sure you own anymore. Ellie woke up hours later, curled against my chest. Her face had new hollows in it. She touched her palm where the jar had been, fingers finding only ash. "Is he gone?" she whispered. I didn't know how to answer. The town felt different the next morning. Lights didn't flare anymore. The air tasted ordinary. Windows that had been aglow were blank and dark. We walked the streets. There were places where the ground had burned faintly, where the dust had glittered with something like glass. The bodies were gone. No footprints, no tracks. It was as though the town had cleaned itself in the night. We buried the dead. We set up a small watch. People came out of hiding when they felt the sun had real weight again. For a few days, the news crackled on the radio about a strange quiet breaking over the county. People said it was over. They said the lights had stopped. But at night, when the lamps in the street still sometimes flickered for no reason, I'd stand on the porch and watch the horizon. Once I thought I saw a pinprick of green in the distance. Quick, then gone. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe not. Ellie left the town a week later. She took the long road south, carrying only a small pack and a sorrow that looked older than she was. She didn't speak much on the way. Before she walked away, she turned and hugged me. Hard. "I heard him," she said, voice soft. For a second after it shattered, just a whisper. He wasn't angry. He said, "Go." Then she let go and walked toward the highway. We tried to believe that burning the jar had ended it for good, that the thing had been a wound and we had finally seared it shut. But I've learned how stories live. You can scar something, hide it, bury it. You can even make the light stop. But pieces of it find a way into the world, into trash piles, into broken jars, into the glass in a stranger's pocket. On quiet nights, I still hear names. On worse nights, I hear my own. I still keep the radio tuned low because people call out sometimes, and a voice can help a person find their feet. If you listen to that crackle on the line and you hear your own name, remember what we did. Don't answer the light. Walk away, and if it follows, find the dark. And if you ever find a jar, whatever you do, be careful. Some things are easier to wound than to kill.